Sarah Mitchell stared at her laptop screen, her coffee growing cold on her desk as she scrolled through the photos from yesterday's field trip. The 7th grade science teacher had promised her students she'd have the pictures uploaded to the school website by Monday morning, and she always kept her promises. The images showed smiling faces at Pine Ridge Nature Reserve, students collecting samples, measuring tree circumferences, and documenting wildlife. Then she clicked on one particular photo that made her blood run cold. Her finger trembled as she zoomed in, her heart pounding against her ribs. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her voice shaking as she spoke to the dispatcher. Before we jump back into what Sarah discovered in that photograph, drop a comment below and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've got something extra special saved for you. The morning had started like any other at Cedar Valley Middle School. Sarah Mitchell arrived at 7 a.m. an hour before, the first bell, to prepare for the day's lessons. At 35, she'd been teaching for 12 years, and her passion for science education had never wavered. Her classroom walls were covered with periodic tables, constellation maps, and student projects from previous years. The smell of coffee from the teacher's lounge mixed with the faint scent of cleaning supplies that lingered from the night custodian's work. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the principal, Jessica Chen. "Don't forget to review the field trip photos before posting. Parents are eager to see them." The message was followed by a smiley face emoji, typical of Jessica's attempts to stay current with digital communication. Sarah smiled, remembering how excited the students had been during yesterday's trip to Pine Ridge Nature Reserve. It had been a perfect spring day, the kind that made outdoor education feel like a gift rather than a curriculum requirement. She opened her laptop and connected her camera, watching as hundreds of photos began transferring. While they uploaded, she glanced around her empty classroom, straightening a few chairs and wiping down the whiteboard. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Everything seemed peaceful, ordinary, safe. The field trip had been in planning for months. Pine Ridge Nature Reserve sprawled across 300 acres of pristine Colorado wilderness, featuring hiking trails, a visitor center, and diverse ecosystems perfect for middle school science education. Sarah had organized similar trips for the past 5 years, always with the same careful attention to detail. Permission slips collected, emergency contacts verified, medication lists checked and double-checked. 28 students had attended, along with 2 parent chaperones and Tom Bradley, the school's most experienced bus driver. As the photos finished uploading, Sarah settled into her desk chair and began her review. The first few dozen showed the bus ride, kids making faces at the camera, some pretending to sleep, others holding up peace signs. She smiled at their energy, remembering how they'd sung camp songs for the first 20 minutes of the journey, until Tom had gently suggested they save their voices for the hike. The next set captured their arrival at the nature reserve. Students poured off the bus, backpacks bouncing, water bottles in hand. She'd insisted everyone wear proper hiking boots and bring sun protection, though a few had still shown up in sneakers, despite multiple reminders. Emily Ross stood out in several photos, her long auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her notebook already out as she sketched the entrance sign. Emily was one of those students teachers remembered long after they moved on to high school. Quiet but intensely curious, she approached every assignment with a scientist's precision. Her father, David Ross, had called Sarah earlier in the week to make sure Emily had everything she needed for the trip. A single parent since his wife had passed away from cancer 3 years ago, David balanced his real estate career with devoted attention to his daughter's education. Sarah continued scrolling through the images. Here were the students gathered around the park ranger for the safety briefing. There was Rebecca Martinez helping Emily identify different types of leaves for their collection project. Mark Stevens The school's security officer, who'd volunteered to accompany them, stood watchfully in the background of several shots, his presence a reassuring constant. The photos progressed chronologically through their day. Students measuring soil pH levels, documenting bird species, carefully collecting water samples from the creek. Sarah had been particularly proud of how seriously they'd taken their assignments. Even the typically rowdy boys had settled into focused observation when they'd spotted a family of deer in the meadow. Lunch break photos showed the group gathered at picnic tables near the visitor center. Someone had snapped a picture of Sarah demonstrating proper specimen handling techniques using a sandwich as a prop, much to everyone's amusement. Lauren Harper, one of the parent volunteers, appeared in several shots, helping distribute juice boxes and making sure everyone reapplied sunscreen. Lauren's involvement with the school had increased dramatically over the past year. As PTA treasurer and frequent volunteer, she seemed to be at every event, always eager to help, always perfectly prepared. Her husband Daniel occasionally joined her, though Sarah had only met him a few times at school functions. He worked in IT somewhere downtown and traveled frequently for business. The afternoon photos showed the group exploring the historic section of the reserve. The old Hartley mansion, abandoned since the 1970s, stood behind a chain-link fence marked with no trespassing signs. Built by a mining baron in the early 1900s, the mansion had fallen into disrepair after a series of owners failed to maintain it. Now it served as a backdrop for lessons about local history and architectural decay. Sarah remembered specifically telling the students to stay well back from the fence. The structure was unstable, with broken windows and a partially collapsed roof. Yet as she scrolled through the photos, she noticed several students had wandered. Closer than instructed, their curiosity overcoming caution. She made a mental note to address this in class, reinforcing the importance of following safety guidelines. It was in one of these mansion photos that something first caught her attention. Emily Ross stood in the foreground, smiling as she held up a particularly interesting rock formation she'd found. Behind her, the mansion loomed dark and forbidding. But there was something else, something in one of the upper windows that made Sarah pause. She zoomed in slightly, squinting at her screen. It looked like a shadow, perhaps a trick of the light. She continued to the next photo. More hiking shots followed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The group had split into smaller teams for the scavenger hunt portion of the trip. Sarah had designed it to encourage careful observation while covering the required curriculum points. Find 3 different types of moss. Identify evidence of animal habitats. Locate and photograph examples of erosion. The students had thrown themselves into the challenge with enthusiasm. Emily and Rebecca had paired up, as expected. Best friends since 4th grade, they balanced each other perfectly. Rebecca's outgoing personality drew Emily out of her shell, while Emily's methodical approach kept Rebecca focused. Their photos showed careful documentation of each discovery, complete with measurement references and detailed notes. Sarah felt a surge of teacher pride, seeing her lessons put into practice so thoroughly. The late afternoon photos captured the group's final activities. They'd gathered at the creek for water quality testing, carefully following the protocols. Sarah had demonstrated in class. Even getting 28 middle schoolers to work with potentially messy equipment had gone smoothly. Mark Stevens had proven particularly helpful, his military background evident in how efficiently he helped organize the students into working groups. As the sun began to lower, casting golden light through the trees, someone had suggested a group photo. They'd assembled on the visitor center steps, everyone tired but happy after a full day of exploration and learning. Sarah stood at one end, Tom Bradley at the other, with the students arranged by height in between. Lauren Harper had volunteered to take the photo, stepping back to fit everyone in frame. Sarah studied this group photo carefully. Every face was accounted for, every student safely surrounded by classmates and adults. Nothing seemed amiss. She was about to move on when she remembered she'd asked Emily to take some candid shots throughout the day with her phone, wanting to capture the trip from a student's perspective. Emily had transferred these to Sarah's camera at the end of the day. These last photos had a different quality, shot from a lower angle and with the unguarded spontaneity of youth. Emily had captured her classmates in moments of genuine discovery. Marcus Williams' face lighting up as he identified a rare butterfly, Sophia Patel carefully sketching a wildflower, Jason Chen excitedly pointing out deer tracks in the mud. The photos revealed the field trip through 12-year-old eyes, full of wonder and authentic engagement. It was while reviewing these student perspective photos that Sarah found the image that changed everything. Emily had been documenting the old Hartley mansion from various angles, apparently fascinated by its Gothic architecture and mysterious atmosphere. In one shot, she'd captured the entire facade, including all 3 stories of broken windows and crumbling stonework. Sarah almost scrolled past it, but something made her pause. She zoomed in on the upper left window, 3rd floor. At first, it looked like the same shadow she'd noticed earlier, but as the image magnified, details emerged that made her stomach clench. It wasn't a shadow at all. There was someone inside the mansion, someone who shouldn't have been there. The figure was partially obscured by broken glass and deteriorating window frames, but unmistakably human. Sarah's hands trembled as she zoomed in further. The image, quality deteriorated with magnification, pixels becoming visible, but she could make out enough details to be certain. A person stood just behind the window, watching the students below. She could see pale skin, dark clothing, and what looked like binoculars or a camera. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The Hartley mansion had been sealed off for good reason. Beyond the obvious safety hazards, there had been incidents over the years: vandalism, drug use, reports of squatters. The property was owned by the state now, pending historical designation and strictly off-limits to the public. Anyone inside was trespassing at best and at worst. Sarah didn't want to complete that thought. She quickly scrolled through the remaining photos, looking for any other signs of the intruder, in 3 more images taken at different times. Throughout the afternoon, she found the same figure in various windows, always watching, always focused on the students below. The realization that someone had been observing them for hours, hidden in that decaying structure, sent chills down her spine. Sarah's teacher instincts kicked into overdrive. Her first responsibility was to her students, to protect them even retroactively from whatever threat this represented. She grabbed her phone, her finger hovering over the keypad. Should she call the principal first, the police, the nature reserve authorities? The decision crystallized as she looked again at the photo, at the figure watching her students with such intense focus. She dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional as Sarah explained what she'd discovered. Her words tumbled out in a rush, describing the photos, the figure in the mansion, the timeline of yesterday's field trip. The woman on the other end asked careful questions, gathering details while simultaneously alerting patrol units in the Pine Ridge area. Officer Greg Thompson arrived at Cedar Valley Middle School 20 minutes later. Sarah met him in the main office, her laptop clutched against her chest like a shield. Principal Jessica Chen had been notified and joined them, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by deep concern. The 3 of them huddled in Jessica's office as Sarah pulled up the photos on her computer. Officer Thompson studied each image carefully, his expression growing more serious with each zoom and enhancement. He pulled out his radio and called for additional units to investigate the Hartley mansion immediately. The abandoned property had been a source of problems for years, but this was different. This involved children. Sarah's mind kept circling back to the students, especially Emily, who had unknowingly captured evidence of the intruder. The girl's natural curiosity and photographic eye had revealed something deeply disturbing. What if the person in the mansion had noticed Emily taking pictures? What if they'd followed the bus back? The possibilities multiplied in her mind like bacteria in a petri dish. Within an hour, the situation had escalated beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. The initial investigation of the Hartley mansion revealed evidence of prolonged habitation, sleeping bags, food supplies, and most alarmingly, hundreds of photographs pinned to the walls. The police weren't releasing details yet, but Officer Thompson's grim expression when he returned to the school told Sarah everything she needed to know. Parents were being notified through the school's emergency system. Sarah watched from her classroom window as cars began arriving, parents hurrying into the building with worried expressions. David Ross was among the first, his real estate blazer, wrinkled as if he'd been wearing it for days. He found Sarah in the hallway, his face pale with concern. Emily was pulled from her English class and brought to the counselor's office where her father waited. Sarah joined them at Dr. Patricia Evans's request, bringing her laptop with the photos. As delicately as possible, they explained the situation to Emily, who listened with wide eyes that grew wider as the implications sank in. The investigation revealed that someone had been living in the Hartley mansion for several weeks, possibly months. The rooms were filled with surveillance equipment, telescopes, cameras with powerful zoom lenses. Most disturbing were the photographs. Covering every wall, a disturbing collage that told a story of obsession. By mid-afternoon, the police had made an arrest. The suspect was detained, trying to leave town, his van packed with photography equipment and personal belongings. Detective Maria Santos arrived at the school to coordinate interviews with students and staff. The investigation was just beginning. But already the scope was becoming clear. Sarah found herself at the center of the unfolding drama. Her careful review of the field trip photos had uncovered something that might have remained hidden indefinitely. She thought about all the times they'd visited Pine Ridge over the years, wondered how long someone might have been watching. The very idea made her skin crawl. Emily handled the situation with remarkable composure for a 12-year-old. She answered the detective's questions clearly, providing details about when and why she'd taken each photo. Her scientific mindset served her well, allowing her to focus on facts rather than fears. David stayed close, one protective hand on his daughter's shoulder throughout the interview. As the day wore on, more details emerged. The arrested individual had a history of similar behavior in other states, always gravitating toward abandoned buildings near schools or youth facilities. The pattern was clear and deeply troubling. Cedar Valley Middle School had narrowly avoided becoming another statistic in a disturbing trend. Principal Chen called an emergency staff meeting after school. Teachers gathered in the library, their usual after-school exhaustion replaced by anxious energy. Sarah found herself repeatedly answering questions about the morning's discovery, walking her colleagues through the timeline of events. Everyone wanted to understand how she'd noticed, what others might have missed. The truth was, Sarah couldn't fully explain it herself. Something about that shadow in the window had triggered her teaching instincts, the same radar that helped her spot struggling students or potential classroom disruptions. Years of watching over children had honed her awareness to an almost supernatural degree. School security protocols came under immediate review. Mark Stevens worked with local police to assess vulnerabilities and strengthen procedures. The field trip policies would need updating too, with new guidelines for checking surrounding structures and maintaining sightlines. What had been a routine, educational outing now served as a case study in vigilance. Lauren Harper appeared at the school later that afternoon, visibly shaken by the news. As a parent volunteer on the trip, she felt personally responsible for missing the danger. Sarah reassured her that no one could have known that the intruder had been careful to remain hidden. Still, Lauren's distress was palpable, her usual, composed demeanor cracked by guilt and fear. The media caught wind of the story by evening. News vans appeared outside Cedar Valley Middle School, reporters eager for details about the teacher who'd spotted danger in a photograph. Sarah declined all interviews, following the district's guidance to let official channels handle communication. The last thing she wanted was to become the center of attention. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open to the now infamous photos. She studied each image again, looking for signs she might have missed during the field trip. Itself, the intruder had been so careful, choosing vantage points that offered clear views while remaining virtually invisible from below. Only Emily's upward angle had caught him. Sleep eluded her as her mind replayed the day's events. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that figure in the window, watching her students with unknown intentions. The what-ifs tormented her. What if she hadn't reviewed the photos so carefully? What if Emily hadn't taken that particular shot? What if they'd planned another trip before discovering the danger? The next morning brought a flood of emails from concerned parents. Some praised Sarah's vigilance. Others questioned how such a threat could have gone unnoticed during the trip itself. She crafted careful responses to each, balancing reassurance with acknowledgement of their valid concerns. The incident had shaken everyone's sense of security. Emily returned to school with her father's reluctant permission. She seemed older, somehow as if the events had aged her overnight. Her classmates treated her with a mixture of awe and sympathy, unsure how to act around someone who'd inadvertently uncovered such darkness. Rebecca stayed close, a protective presence that reminded Sarah why she loved teaching this age group. The police investigation continued to expand. The suspect's laptop contained thousands of photos taken over several months, documenting not just school trips but daily activities visible from the mansion's windows. Joggers on nearby trails, families picnicking in the reserve, youth groups on nature walks. The scope of surveillance was staggering. Detective Santos returned to interview Sarah again, this time with more specific questions about previous field trips and any unusual incidents she might have dismissed at the time. Sarah racked her memory, searching for anomalies that might have seemed innocent before. A few instances stood out in retrospect, moments when students had reported feeling watched or seeing movement in the mansion windows. The school district mandated new training for all staff, focusing on threat assessment and situational awareness. Sarah found herself in the strange position of being held up as an example. Her methodical photo review now standard procedure for all field trip documentation. The attention made her uncomfortable, but she understood the necessity of learning from the incident. David Ross stopped by Sarah's classroom after school one day, Emily waiting in the hallway. He struggled to find words, finally managing a simple but heartfelt thank you. The gratitude in his eyes said more than words ever could. As a single parent, trusting others with his daughter's safety required enormous faith. Sarah had validated that trust in the most crucial moment. The community response was overwhelming. Parents organized additional security measures, volunteering for watch duties and funding new equipment. The incident had awakened a collective protective instinct, transforming Cedar Valley from a typical suburban school into a fortress of vigilance. Some worried about the psychological impact of such intensity, but most agreed that safety trumped all other concerns. Sarah began to notice things she'd previously overlooked. The way certain areas of the school grounds offered concealment, how easily someone could observe without being seen. Her heightened awareness felt like a burden sometimes, making her second-guess every shadow and stranger. Dr. Evans encouraged her to talk through these feelings, recognizing the signs of hypervigilance that often followed traumatic discoveries. 2 weeks after the initial incident, authorities revealed the full extent of what they'd found in the Hartley mansion. The suspect had created detailed files on dozens of children from various schools, tracking their routines and relationships with disturbing precision. Emily's name appeared frequently, her academic achievements and quiet nature apparently drawing particular interest. The revelation sent new shockwaves through the community. Parents who'd initially felt removed from the danger now wondered if their own children had been observed. The school implemented additional counseling services, bringing in specialists to help students and families process their fears. The ripple effect seemed endless, touching every aspect of school life. Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed purpose. Her science lessons now incorporated elements of observation and critical thinking that went beyond the curriculum. She taught her students to trust their instincts, to speak up when something felt wrong, to look for patterns and anomalies in their environment. Education had always been about more than facts and figures, but now it felt like preparation for survival. The legal proceedings moved slowly through the system. The suspect's public defender argued for psychiatric evaluation, citing a history of mental illness and trauma. The community struggled with competing desires for justice and understanding. Some wanted maximum punishment, others advocated for treatment and rehabilitation. The debate reflected larger societal questions about crime, mental health, and protecting children. Emily's photographs from the field trip took on new significance as evidence. Her artistic eye had captured not just scientific specimens, but crucial proof of criminal activity. The district attorney praised her documentation skills, noting how her careful framing and multiple angles had provided investigators with invaluable material. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that a child's school project had exposed an adult predator. As spring turned to summer, Cedar Valley Middle School adapted to its new reality. Field trips continued, but with enhanced security protocols. Volunteers underwent background checks and training. The Hartley mansion was finally demolished, removing both a physical hazard and a psychological reminder of the incident. Some protested the loss of historical architecture, but safety concerns ultimately prevailed. Sarah found herself changed by the experience in ways she couldn't fully articulate. Her teaching remained passionate and dedicated, but now carried an undercurrent of protective vigilance. She'd always known that educators were more than just instructors, that they served as guardians and advocates for their students. The incident had simply made that responsibility more visible and urgent. The new school year brought fresh faces and familiar routines. Sarah's classroom filled with 7th graders eager to explore science, unaware of the previous spring's drama. She welcomed them with her usual enthusiasm, but her eyes now automatically scanned for anything out of place. The photos from that fateful field trip remained saved on her computer, a reminder that danger could hide in plain sight. Emily moved on to 8th grade, her experience marking her as someone who'd faced adult realities too soon. She continued to excel academically, her interest in photography now tinged with awareness of its power to reveal hidden truths. Teachers noticed a new maturity in her work, a depth of observation that set her apart from her peers. The community gradually found its equilibrium again, though forever altered by the incident. Parents remained more involved, more alert to potential threats. The school maintained its enhanced security measures, balancing openness with caution. Everyone understood that innocence, once lost, couldn't be fully recovered. As Sarah prepared for another field trip to a different location, she reviewed her safety checklist with extra care. The memory of that morning, zooming in on Emily's photo and seeing the figure in the window, would never fully fade. It had become part of her teaching story, a moment when instinct and thoroughness had potentially saved lives. The investigation eventually revealed that the suspect had been planning something more sinister than surveillance. Items found in the mansion suggested preparations for abduction, though authorities couldn't determine if specific targets had been selected. The thought sent chills through the community, reinforcing how close they'd come to tragedy. Sarah often thought about the chain of events that had led to the discovery. If she hadn't promised to post photos quickly, if Emily hadn't been so thorough in her documentation, if the lighting had been slightly different, if she'd been too tired to zoom in on that particular image. So many variables had aligned to reveal the threat. It felt like more than coincidence, though she wasn't one to believe in fate. The story became a cautionary tale shared among educators, a reminder that protection of students extended beyond the classroom walls. Sarah received invitations to speak at conferences about vigilance and threat recognition, though she declined. Most of them, the attention felt unearned. She'd simply been doing her job, reviewing photos as any responsible teacher would. Months later, during a parent-teacher conference, David Ross thanked her again. Emily had begun seeing a therapist to process the experience, working through the complex emotions of having inadvertently exposed danger. The therapy was helping, allowing her to reclaim her sense of safety while maintaining healthy awareness. Sarah felt relief, knowing Emily was getting support. The demolished Hartley Mansion site was eventually converted into a memorial garden, a peaceful space that acknowledged the past while looking toward the future. Students from Cedar Valley contributed to its design, creating something beautiful from a place that had harbored darkness. It became a symbol of resilience and community strength. Sarah sometimes walked through the garden during her lunch breaks, reflecting on how a single photograph had changed so many lives. The incident had revealed both vulnerability and strength, showing how a community could unite to protect its children. Her role in the discovery felt less like heroism and more like fulfilling a sacred trust that came with being an educator. The suspect ultimately pled guilty to multiple charges, accepting a plea deal that included mandatory psychiatric treatment. The sentence brought closure of sorts, though everyone understood that healing would take much longer than any legal proceeding. The community had learned hard lessons about vigilance and the price of assuming safety. Teaching science to middle schoolers remained Sarah's passion, but now it carried additional weight. Every lesson about observation and hypothesis testing felt connected to that morning when she'd noticed something wrong in a photograph. She'd learned that science wasn't just about understanding the natural world. It was about seeing clearly, questioning assumptions, and trusting empirical evidence even when it revealed uncomfortable truths. As she prepared for another year of field trips and laboratory experiments, Sarah carried with her the knowledge that teaching meant more than imparting information. It meant watching over the vulnerable, speaking up for those who couldn't protect themselves, and never assuming that any environment was completely safe. The photos from that spring day at Pine Ridge remained a powerful reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries were the ones we wished we didn't have to make. Years later, when Emily Ross graduated as valedictorian and mentioned her 7th grade science teacher in her speech, Sarah felt the full circle of their shared experience. Emily had transformed a traumatic discovery into motivation for academic excellence, channeling her natural curiosity into a passion for investigative journalism. She planned to study forensic photography in college, inspired by how a single image had potentially saved lives. The Cedar Valley community never forgot the lessons learned that spring. Enhanced security became permanent, extra vigilance the new normal. But rather than living in fear, they'd chosen empowerment through awareness. Sarah's careful review of field trip photos had become legendary, a reminder that heroes often emerged from ordinary moments when someone simply paid attention. The science classroom where it all began remained Sarah's domain, filled with new students each year who learned about more than just photosynthesis and periodic tables. They learned about observation, critical thinking, and the responsibility to speak up when something seemed wrong. The story of the field trip photos became part of the school's folklore, passed down from class to class as a testament to the power of vigilance. Sarah Mitchell continued teaching with the same dedication that had led her to scrutinize those photographs so carefully. Her legacy wasn't just in the science concepts she taught, but in the lives she'd protected through simple thoroughness. Every time she reviewed student work, checked permission slips, or organized field trips, she remembered that morning when a shadow in a window had changed everything. The incident at Pine Ridge Nature Reserve became a case study in school safety protocols, referenced in training materials across the country. But for Sarah, it remained personal, a reminder that teaching was about more than curriculum standards and test scores. It was about creating a safe space for learning, protecting innocence, while preparing students for a complex world, and never underestimating the power of paying attention to details. As she looked through new field trip photos years later, Sarah's trained eye automatically scanned for anomalies. The vigilance had become second nature, integrated into her teaching practice like any other professional skill. She'd learned that being an educator meant being a guardian, a detective, and sometimes the person who noticed what others missed. The community of Cedar Valley had been forever changed by a teacher who zoomed in on a photograph and trusted her instincts enough to call 911. In doing so, Sarah Mitchell had demonstrated that heroism often wore ordinary clothes and worked in everyday places, protecting children through simple acts of careful observation and decisive action. The ripples from that single morning continued to spread, touching lives in ways that couldn't be measured but would never be forgotten. The following weeks brought unprecedented changes to Cedar Valley Middle School. Security cameras were installed at every entrance and exit, their dark lenses a constant reminder of vulnerability discovered too late. Sarah found herself arriving earlier each morning, walking the perimeter of the building with Mark Stevens, checking for anything unusual before students arrived. The atmosphere in her classroom had shifted subtly. Students who once chatted freely now glanced nervously at windows, jumped at unexpected sounds. Sarah worked to restore normalcy while acknowledging their legitimate concerns. She incorporated lessons about personal safety into her science curriculum, teaching observation skills that served dual purposes, academic and protective. Emily Ross threw herself into a new project, creating a presentation about digital photography and forensic analysis. Her father had bought her a professional camera, channeling her experience into something constructive. Sarah supervised as Emily experimented with different lenses and angles, documenting how perspective could reveal hidden details. Detective Santos visited the school regularly, building trust with students who might have information about the suspect's activities. She revealed that the man arrested at the Hartley mansion had been using multiple aliases, moving from state to state whenever suspicion arose. His real name was Marcus Tillman, and his history painted a disturbing picture of escalating behavior. The investigation uncovered connections between Tillman and several unsolved cases across the Midwest. Missing children reports, suspicious activities near schools, abandoned buildings transformed into observation posts. Cedar Valley had nearly become another dot on a map of predatory behavior, saved only by a teacher's careful attention to detail. Sarah attended mandatory counseling sessions, part of the district's response to the trauma. Dr. Patricia Evans helped her process the conflicting emotions: pride in her discovery, guilt over what she might have missed before, fear about future threats. The sessions revealed how deeply the incident had affected her sense of professional responsibility. Parents formed a new safety committee, meeting weekly to discuss security improvements. David Ross became co-chair, his real estate expertise valuable in assessing building vulnerabilities. Lauren Harper, despite her initial distress at having been on the trip, threw herself into fundraising for new security equipment. The community's response demonstrated how crisis could forge stronger bonds. The old Hartley Mansion site became a forensic archaeology dig as investigators searched for evidence of previous victims. Sarah couldn't drive past without remembering. That morning, scrolling through photos, seeing that figure in the window, the memory had burned itself into her consciousness, appearing uninvited during quiet moments. Emily's photographs from the field trip were entered into evidence. There, metadata providing crucial timeline information. Prosecutors built their case methodically, using the images to demonstrate Tillman's pattern of surveillance. The trial date was set for the following spring, giving everyone time to prepare for renewed attention. Sarah developed new protocols for field trip photography, creating a systematic review process that other teachers adopted. Every image was examined in grid format, backgrounds scrutinized as carefully as subjects. What had been her personal practice became district policy, a lasting change born from near tragedy. The science curriculum evolved to include digital literacy and image analysis. Students learned about pixels and resolution, how to spot edited photos, why metadata mattered. These lessons felt more relevant than ever, preparing young minds for a world where dangers could hide in plain sight, even in their own photographs. Local news featured the story repeatedly, each update bringing fresh waves of anxiety to the community. Sarah declined interview requests, preferring to maintain her focus on teaching. The media attention felt intrusive, transforming a private crisis into public spectacle. She wanted her students to remember her as their science teacher, not as the woman who'd spotted a predator. Jessica Chen implemented new visitor protocols, requiring detailed sign-ins and background checks for anyone entering the building. The open-door policy that had characterized Cedar Valley disappeared, replaced by locked entrances and security buzzers. Some mourned the loss of accessibility, but most accepted it as necessary evolution. The suspect's van yielded disturbing evidence. Hundreds of memory cards filled with surveillance photos, detailed notes about children's routines, maps marking schools and youth centers across multiple states. Investigators worked to identify potential victims, reaching out to communities where Tillman had lived under various identities. Sarah noticed how her teaching style had changed. She positioned herself to see all corners of her classroom, kept doors locked during lessons, maintained visual contact with every student. These adaptations happened unconsciously at first, her protective instincts reshaping pedagogical practice. Emily continued to process her experience through photography, creating a portfolio that documented healing. Images of classmates laughing, flowers blooming in the school garden, sunlight streaming through windows. Each photo reclaimed a sense of safety. Sarah mentored her project, understanding how creativity could transform trauma into strength. The school board allocated funds for a full-time security officer, expanding Mark Stevens's role. He coordinated with local police, conducted regular safety drills, trained staff in threat recognition. His military background proved invaluable as Cedar Valley transformed from soft target to hardened facility. Parents struggled to balance protection with independence. Some pulled their children from extracurricular activities. Others installed tracking apps on phones. Sarah watched these changes with mixed feelings, understanding the impulse while worrying about the cost to childhood. Freedom. The incident had stolen more than just a sense of security. Detective Santos shared updates carefully, revealing information that helped without causing panic. Tillman's psychiatric evaluation showed signs of delusional thinking, fixation patterns, elaborate fantasy construction. Understanding his psychology helped the community recognize warning signs, though it offered little comfort about what might have happened. The trial preparation intensified as spring approached. Sarah would testify about discovering the photos, Emily about taking them. Both dreaded the prospect but understood its necessity. The prosecutor assured them their testimony would help prevent future victims, transforming their experience into protective action. Rebecca Martinez became Emily's constant companion, their friendship deepening through shared adversity. The two girls developed their own safety protocols, walking together, checking in regularly, maintaining awareness of surroundings. Their maturity impressed Sarah. Though she wished they hadn't needed to develop such skills, the school implemented a buddy system for all activities, ensuring no student was ever truly alone. This policy extended to teachers, who now worked in pairs during early morning or late afternoon hours. The collective vigilance felt both reassuring and exhausting, a new normal that required constant adjustment. Sarah's apartment became a secondary workspace as she developed new curricula focused on safety awareness. She researched age-appropriate ways to discuss predatory behavior, consulted with child psychologists, created lessons that empowered without terrifying. The work consumed her evenings, but felt like necessary penance. Lauren Harper organized community workshops on child safety, bringing in experts to speak about online threats, stranger danger, and grooming tactics. These sessions drew large crowds, parents hungry for information that might protect their children. The shared vulnerability created unexpected connections among previously distant neighbors. The memorial garden, planned for the Hartley mansion, site took shape slowly. Landscape architects worked with trauma specialists to design a space that acknowledged the past while promoting healing. Students contributed ideas: a butterfly garden, meditation labyrinth, storytelling circle. This project became a symbol of transformation. Sarah found herself checking locks obsessively, both at school and home. Dr. Evans helped her recognize these behaviors as normal responses to trauma, encouraging healthy coping mechanisms. Exercise became her outlet. Early morning runs, when the world felt safest, the rhythm of footfalls drowning out anxious thoughts. Marcus Tillman's public defender requested multiple psychiatric evaluations, building an insanity defense. The legal maneuvering frustrated the community, who wanted swift justice. Detective Santos explained the process patiently, preparing everyone for a lengthy trial that might not provide the closure they sought. Emily's academic performance soared, despite the circumstances. Her science projects showed remarkable sophistication, incorporating elements of psychology and criminal justice. Teachers noticed her analytical abilities had sharpened, as if the experience had activated dormant intellectual capacity. Trauma's strange gifts, Sarah thought, watching her student flourish. The summer brought relative calm. Students scattered for vacations, the building underwent security renovations, teachers attended specialized training. Sarah used the break to visit her sister in Oregon, seeking distance from the memories that haunted Cedar Valley's familiar streets. The Pacific Ocean's vastness provided perspective, reminding her the world contained beauty alongside danger. Returning for the new school year felt like entering a different school. Metal detectors greeted visitors. ID badges hung from every neck. Security protocols governed daily routines. Sarah's classroom remained a sanctuary of scientific inquiry, but now within a fortress designed to protect innocence. New students arrived unaware of the previous year's drama, their fresh faces a reminder of renewal. Sarah welcomed them warmly, while noting how her experienced students had changed, more serious, more observant, more protective of younger schoolmates. The incident had aged them prematurely, stealing some essential lightness. The trial date approached like a storm on the horizon. Media requests intensified, lawyers scheduled preparation sessions, anxiety rippled through the community. Sarah focused on her teaching, using routine to maintain stability. Her students needed consistency more than ever as the outside world intruded on their educational haven. Emily created a photography exhibit for the school library, titling it, "Through Young Eyes, Seeing Safely." The collection showed everyday scenes from unexpected angles, training viewers to notice background details. Opening night drew a large crowd, parents and teachers marveling at how artistic vision could serve protective purposes. Detective Santos announced that Tillman had agreed to a plea deal, avoiding trial in exchange for life imprisonment without parole. The news brought mixed reactions: relief at avoiding testimony, frustration at losing the chance for public accountability. Sarah felt only exhaustion, grateful the ordeal was nearly over. The community gathered for a ceremony marking the Memorial Garden's completion. Where the Hartley mansion once harbored darkness, colorful flowers now bloomed. Children played on carefully designed equipment, while parents watched from benches placed for optimal sightlines. The transformation felt symbolic, beauty rising from fear's ashes. Sarah stood with her students at the dedication, watching Emily photograph the event with her new camera. The girl's growth amazed her. From unwitting victim to empowered advocate, other schools had invited Emily to speak about observation skills and personal safety. Her experience transformed into teaching tool. David Ross approached Sarah after the ceremony, his gratitude still evident months later. He'd established a scholarship fund for students interested in forensic science, honoring how his daughter's photographs had prevented tragedy. The gesture reflected the community's determination to extract meaning from their ordeal. Fall settled over Cedar Valley with unusual gentleness. The heightened security measures had become routine, integrated into daily life without dominating it. Sarah's classroom buzzed with normal adolescent energy as students dissected flowers and studied chemical reactions. Learning continued, perhaps deeper for having survived threat. The national media attention faded as newer stories claimed headlines. Cedar Valley preferred the return to obscurity, focusing on internal healing rather than external perception. Town hall meetings shifted from security concerns to curriculum development and sports programs, normal suburban priorities reasserting themselves. Sarah received recognition from various educational organizations, her vigilance held up as exemplary. She accepted awards uncomfortably, still believing she'd simply done her job. The accolades felt hollow compared to seeing her students safe and thriving, their trust in education restored through careful nurturing. Winter brought its own challenges, as shorter days triggered anxiety in some community members. The school counseling staff remained busy, helping students and parents process lingering fears. Support groups met weekly, sharing strategies for moving forward while maintaining appropriate caution. Emily's college applications included powerful essays about her experience, how it had shaped her career aspirations. Universities competed for her enrollment, recognizing both her academic excellence and unique perspective on forensic photography. Sarah wrote glowing recommendations, proud of her students' resilience. The anniversary of the discovery approached, with mixed emotions. Some wanted to commemorate it, others preferred to let the date pass unmarked. The school chose middle ground, a brief assembly focused on gratitude for safety, recognition of growth, and commitment to vigilance. No mention of specific events, just acknowledgement of shared journey. Sarah prepared a new unit on ecosystem recovery after disturbance, the scientific parallel to their community's experience obvious to her older students. They studied how forests regenerated after fires, how species adapted to changed environments. The lessons carried deeper meaning for those who remembered the previous spring. Marcus Tillman died in prison, a heart attack ending his story with unexpected finality. The news brought closure of sorts, eliminating any possibility of appeal. or parole hearings. Sarah felt neither satisfaction nor sadness, just a quiet relief that one chapter had definitively ended. Spring returned with unusual beauty. The memorial garden burst into bloom, its butterfly population establishing successfully. Children played there daily, their laughter a testament to resilience. Sarah often ate lunch on a bench facing the spot where the mansion once stood, marveling at transformation's power. Emily received early acceptance to several prestigious universities, choosing one with a renowned forensic science program. Her senior project examined how perspective influenced perception, using her own photographs as case studies. The presentation drew standing ovations from peers who understood its personal significance. The school year ended with traditional ceremonies and celebrations. Sarah watched her students advance to the next grade, carrying lessons that extended far beyond science. They'd learned about observation and analysis, certainly, but also about courage, community, and the responsibility to protect one another. Summer planning sessions focused on normal educational improvements, new textbooks, updated technology, expanded arts programs. The security measures remained but no longer dominated discussions. Cedar Valley had found its balance, maintaining vigilance while refusing to let fear define its character. Sarah took another vacation, this time to New England's quiet mountains. She hiked alone, camera in hand, practicing the observation skills she'd taught her students. Every photograph reminded her of that morning when she'd noticed something wrong, when attention to detail had made all the difference. Returning home felt peaceful now. The apartment that had once echoed with anxiety welcomed her warmly. She prepared for another school year with renewed energy, curriculum plans spreading across her dining table. Teaching remained her calling, perhaps stronger for having been tested. The new term began with familiar rituals. Nervous seventh graders finding their classrooms, returning students sharing summer stories, teachers decorating bulletin boards. Sarah's room filled with fresh faces, eager to explore science's wonders. She greeted them warmly, knowing she'd protect them as fiercely as she'd teach them. Emily visited during college breaks, sharing her studies with obvious passion. She'd found her calling in forensic photography, turning traumatic discovery into professional purpose. Her success validated Sarah's belief in education's transformative power, how knowledge could convert fear into strength. Cedar Valley Middle School continued its evolution, security measures now seamlessly integrated into daily operations. Visitors still signed in and wore badges. Doors remained locked during classes, cameras monitored hallways. But laughter filled the corridors, learning flourished in classrooms, and children grew safely within protective boundaries. The memorial garden became a community gathering place, hosting outdoor classes and weekend festivals. Its beauty masked its origin story for newcomers who saw only colorful flowers and happy children. Longtime residents knew the deeper meaning, appreciating the symbolic victory of life over fear. Sarah developed new teaching methods that incorporated safety awareness naturally into science lessons. Students learned observation skills through nature study, practiced documentation through lab reports, understood pattern recognition through data analysis. The dual purposes served them well, preparing minds while protecting bodies. Years later, when people asked about the changes at Cedar Valley Middle School, administrators spoke proudly of their comprehensive security system. Teachers highlighted innovative curricula that prepared students for modern challenges. Parents praised the strong sense of community that had emerged from crisis. Sarah Mitchell continued teaching, her reputation as an observant and caring educator, attracting families to the district. She never forgot that morning when shadows in a photograph had revealed danger. The memory informed every lesson plan, every field trip, every interaction with students who trusted her to keep them safe while opening their minds to science's wonders. The story became part of Cedar Valley's collective memory, shared with new teachers and families as both cautionary tale and inspiration. How a teacher's careful attention had prevented tragedy. How a student's photograph had exposed a predator. How a community had transformed fear into vigilance and vulnerability into strength. The details faded with time, but the lessons remained. Watch carefully, trust instincts, protect the innocent, and never underestimate the power of someone who truly sees. Dawn broke over Cedar Valley with a gentleness that belied the transformations rippling through the community. Sarah Mitchell stood at her classroom window, coffee mug in hand, watching students stream through the reinforced security gates. The morning ritual had become a meditation of sorts, a quiet moment before the day's controlled chaos began. Emily Ross had graduated with highest honors, her valedictory speech touching on the responsibility that came with clear vision. She spoke of her science teacher who had taught her to look beyond the obvious, to question what seemed normal, to trust the instincts that whispered something was wrong. The packed auditorium had listened in reverent silence, understanding the weight behind her words. The scholarship fund established in Emily's name had grown substantially, supporting students interested in forensic science and criminal justice. David Ross managed it with the same attention to detail he brought to his real estate business, determined that his daughter's experience would continue benefiting others. Each recipient carried forward the legacy of vigilance born from that. Spring Day, Cedar Valley. Middle School's transformation extended far beyond physical security measures. The curriculum now integrated awareness training seamlessly into every subject. English classes analyzed articles about personal safety, math problems, incorporated crime statistics, history lessons, examined how communities responded to threats throughout time. Education had evolved to meet modern challenges. Sarah's teaching methods became a model for districts nationwide. She conducted workshops during summer breaks, sharing techniques for incorporating observation skills into science education. Her presentations always began with the same message. Teachers were often the first line of defense, positioned to notice what others might miss. The responsibility was heavy but necessary. Detective Maria Santos had moved on to federal law enforcement, her work on the Tillman case earning recognition from the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit. Before leaving, she'd established a partnership between Cedar Valley schools and local police, ensuring ongoing communication about potential threats. The relationship proved invaluable as other communities faced similar challenges. The memorial garden flourished beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a symbol of healing had become a living classroom where students studied botany, ecology, and environmental science. Sarah often conducted lessons there, teaching photosynthesis while butterflies danced among the flowers. The juxtaposition of beauty and its dark origins never failed to move her. Lauren Harper's involvement with school safety had evolved into a full-time position as the district's security coordinator. Her guilt over missing the danger during that field trip had transformed into fierce dedication to protecting all children. She worked closely with Mark Stevens, their combined expertise creating protocols that balanced security with educational freedom. The ripple effects of the Cedar Valley incident spread through law enforcement circles. Police departments began checking abandoned buildings near schools more frequently, investigating reports of suspicious photography more seriously. Several other predators were caught using similar methods, their capture directly attributed to increased awareness following Sarah's discovery. Emily's first year at university challenged her in unexpected ways. Professors recognized her name from news coverage, some treating her with kid gloves, others pushing harder to prove she'd earned her place. She responded by excelling in every course, her portfolio of forensic photography growing more sophisticated. The girl who'd accidentally captured danger now deliberately sought to expose it. Sarah maintained contact with many former students, but her bond with Emily remained special. They exchanged emails regularly, Emily sharing her academic progress, Sarah offering guidance and encouragement. Their relationship had transcended the typical teacher-student dynamic, forged in crisis but sustained through mutual respect and shared purpose. The second anniversary of the discovery passed with less fanfare than the first. The community had settled into its new normal: security. Measures no longer feeling oppressive, but simply part of daily routine. Children who'd been traumatized showed remarkable resilience, their recovery testament to the support systems put in place. Healing happened gradually, but genuinely. Principal Jessica Chen announced her retirement, citing the desire to spend more time with grandchildren. Her replacement came from a district that had experienced its own security crisis, bringing fresh perspectives on balancing safety with educational mission. The transition symbolized Cedar Valley's evolution from reactive to proactive in protecting its students. Sarah's classroom evolved each year, incorporating new technology and teaching methods while maintaining its warm, welcoming atmosphere. Her desk still faced the door, windows remained unobstructed, but these precautions had become invisible to students focused on learning. She'd mastered the art of vigilance without paranoia, protection without fear. The trial that never happened still haunted some community members. Tillman's plea deal had denied them the catharsis of public testimony, the chance to confront evil directly. Dr. Evans continued running support groups for those struggling with unresolved feelings, helping them find closure through other means. Justice took many forms, not all of them involving courtrooms. Emily's junior year brought an internship with a prominent forensic photography firm. Her supervisor, initially skeptical about hiring someone so young, quickly recognized her exceptional eye for detail. She worked on several high-profile cases, her ability to spot anomalies in images contributing to multiple convictions. The student had become the professional. Cedar Valley's property values initially dipped following the incident, but had since rebounded stronger than ever. Families were drawn to the community's demonstrated commitment to child safety, its cohesive response to crisis. Real estate listings highlighted the advanced security systems and strong parent involvement as selling points. Tragedy had paradoxically increased desirability. Sarah developed a new course for advanced students: scientific observation and analysis. The curriculum combined traditional scientific method with modern investigative techniques, teaching students to apply critical thinking to real-world situations. The class filled immediately each semester, students eager to learn skills that extended beyond academic application. The abandoned building registry Sarah had suggested became state law, requiring regular inspections of vacant structures near schools, parks, and youth facilities. Owners faced fines for inadequate security, motivating proper maintenance or demolition. The legislation, informally known as Emily's Law, prevented similar predators from establishing observation posts. Mark Stevens expanded the school security team, training a new generation of officers in child-centered protection strategies. His military background proved invaluable in creating protocols that were thorough without being militaristic. Students knew him by name, his presence reassuring rather than intimidating. Security had a human face at Cedar Valley. Sarah's personal life had found new balance. The hypervigilance that initially consumed her had mellowed into sustainable awareness. She'd started dating again, meeting a fellow educator who understood the unique pressures of their profession. Their relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and mutual respect for the responsibility they carried. The Hartley Mansion site hosted its first graduation ceremony, the Memorial Garden providing a stunning backdrop for the milestone event. Sarah watched from the faculty section as students she'd taught since 7th grade received their diplomas. Many mentioned her influence in their graduation speeches, crediting her with teaching them to see the world more clearly. Emily's senior thesis examined the psychological impact of inadvertent discovery of criminal activity. Her research included interviews with others who'd accidentally uncovered crimes through photography or video. The work earned academic honors and publication in a respected journal. She dedicated it to the teacher who taught me that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention. Federal grants began flowing to schools implementing Cedar Valley's integrated safety curriculum. Sarah served on the advisory board, helping other districts adapt the model to their specific needs. The work felt like multiplying her impact, spreading protective awareness to thousands of students she'd never meet personally. The 5th anniversary brought unexpected visitors. Families from other states whose children had been identified as potential Tillman victims through the investigation came to thank the community. They gathered in the memorial garden, sharing stories of near misses and gratitude for the teacher who'd noticed something wrong. The ceremony proved deeply healing for everyone involved. Emily graduated summa cum laude, her forensic photography skills already in demand by law enforcement agencies. She chose to pursue graduate studies while working as a consultant, determined to push the field forward. Her acceptance speech at the graduation ceremony moved many to tears, especially when she spoke directly to Sarah, seated in the audience. Cedar Valley Middle School's security protocols became required study at education conferences. Administrators from around the world visited to observe their integrated approach to safety and learning. Sarah often led tours, explaining how they'd transformed fear into empowerment, vulnerability into strength. The message resonated across cultural and geographical boundaries. The community established an annual awareness day, not to commemorate the discovery, but to reinforce ongoing vigilance. Activities included safety workshops, self-defense classes, and exhibitions of student artwork exploring themes of protection and observation. The event grew each year, attracting participants from neighboring towns who recognized the value of proactive preparation. Sarah received an invitation to Emily's wedding, a joyful occasion that felt like a culmination of recovery. The bride had met her partner in graduate school, another forensic specialist who shared her passion for justice through imagery. Watching Emily dance at her reception, radiating happiness and confidence, Sarah felt the deep satisfaction of a teacher who'd helped guide a student through darkness into light. The school district published a comprehensive guide based on Cedar Valley's experience, detailing everything from initial threat assessment to long-term community healing. Sarah contributed several chapters on incorporating safety awareness into curriculum without traumatizing students. The publication became a standard reference for educators nationwide. New teachers joining Cedar Valley underwent specialized orientation that included the history of the Tillman incident and its aftermath. They learned not just about security protocols, but about the culture of vigilance that permeated the school. Sarah often spoke at these sessions, emphasizing that protecting students was as fundamental to teaching as imparting knowledge. The memorial garden expanded to include an educational center, where students learned about personal safety through interactive exhibits. Technology allowed visitors to practice identifying suspicious behavior in simulated environments, developing observation skills in controlled settings. The center honored the past while preparing for future challenges. Emily's first book, Through the Lens of Safety, A Survivor's Guide to Vigilant Living, became a bestseller. She donated proceeds to childhood protection organizations and spoke at conferences worldwide. Her message emphasized empowerment over fear, preparation over paranoia. Critics praised her balanced approach to a difficult subject. Sarah's influence extended through generations of students who carried her lessons into their adult lives. Former students became teachers, law enforcement officers, social workers, and parents who understood the importance of vigilance. The ripple effects of one teacher's careful attention continued expanding, creating an ever-widening circle of protection. The renovation of Cedar Valley Middle School incorporated cutting-edge security technology while maintaining a welcoming educational environment. Biometric systems replaced key cards, AI-assisted cameras provided comprehensive coverage, and panic buttons were discreetly installed throughout the building. Yet the halls still echoed with normal adolescent energy, learning flourishing within protective boundaries. Detective Santos, now Special Agent Santos, returned to Cedar Valley to establish a regional training center for crimes against children. She credited the community's response to the Tillman case as inspiration for her career transition. The center brought federal resources to the area, strengthening the protective network around vulnerable populations. Sarah developed an online course, sharing her observation techniques with educators globally. The platform included video lessons, interactive exercises, and discussion forums where teachers shared experiences and strategies. Enrollment exceeded expectations, demonstrating worldwide hunger for practical protection skills integrated into education. The Memorial Garden hosted weddings now, former students choosing to begin their married lives where their community had demonstrated its strength. Sarah attended many of these ceremonies, watching young adults she'd taught create new families, built on foundations of trust and vigilance. Life had truly triumphed over fear. Emily's doctoral research focused on developing AI systems to analyze photographs for signs of predatory surveillance. Her work caught the attention of tech companies and law enforcement agencies alike. The girl who'd accidentally photographed a predator now worked to automate detection, potentially saving countless children from similar threats. Cedar Valley's transformation story featured in documentaries and case studies examined by sociologists, educators, and security experts. The community's journey from vulnerability to strength provided a roadmap for others facing similar challenges. Sarah participated reluctantly in these productions, always redirecting focus from her individual actions to the collective response. The empty lot where Tillman's van had been found was transformed into a technology center where students learned coding, digital literacy, and cyber safety. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Where a predator had used technology for evil, children now mastered it for protection and empowerment. Sarah often taught classes there, finding redemption in the repurposed space. Annual reunions brought together everyone involved in the original incident: police officers, teachers, parents, and former students. These gatherings served as both celebration and recommitment to vigilance. Stories were shared, lessons reinforced, and bonds strengthened. The community had transformed shared trauma into lasting connection. Sarah's retirement approached faster than expected. Time accelerated by purposeful days and meaningful work. She'd trained her replacement carefully, ensuring continuity in both teaching excellence and protective awareness. The transition felt natural, her legacy secure in the systems and culture she'd helped establish. The final field trip Sarah chaperoned before retirement returned to Pine Ridge Nature Reserve. Students collected samples and documented wildlife, their photographs automatically uploaded to secure servers for review. She walked the familiar paths with deep emotion, remembering that day when everything changed, grateful for the journey that followed. Emily delivered the keynote address at Sarah's retirement ceremony, speaking eloquently about the teacher who'd saved countless lives through simple vigilance. The auditorium overflowed with former students, colleagues, and community members whose lives had been touched by Sarah's dedication. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Cedar Valley Middle School named its new science wing in Sarah's honor, a fitting tribute to the teacher whose observation skills had protected an entire generation. The dedication plaque read simply, "In honor of Sarah Mitchell, who taught us that the most important discoveries often come from paying attention to what others overlook." The retirement party in the memorial garden brought the story full circle. Where darkness had once hidden, light now celebrated. Where fear had threatened, love now triumphed. Sarah stood among the butterflies and flowers, surrounded by people whose lives she'd touched, knowing her true legacy lived in the countless students who'd learned to see the world clearly and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Emily presented Sarah with a leather-bound album containing photographs and letters from students spanning decades. Each page told a story of influence, of lessons learned and applied, of vigilance passed from teacher to student to the wider world. The gift represented more than memories. It documented a legacy of protection that would continue long after Sarah's direct involvement ended. The sun set over Cedar Valley as the retirement celebration wound down. Sarah walked through the memorial garden one last time as an active teacher, touching the plaques that marked the transformation from tragedy to triumph. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter, but the lessons learned and shared would continue protecting children for generations to come. Her final act as a Cedar Valley teacher was reviewing the next day's field trip photos submitted by her replacement for a second opinion. Sarah smiled as she methodically examined each image, checking backgrounds, noting details, ensuring safety. Some habits, formed in crisis but sustained through purpose, would never truly retire. The next morning, Sarah closed her classroom door for the last time, leaving behind more than lesson plans and graded papers. She left a culture of vigilance, a legacy of protection, and the knowledge that one person paying attention could change everything. The halls of Cedar Valley Middle School would remember her not just as a science teacher, but as a guardian who taught an entire community how to see. Years later, when new threats emerged and different challenges faced educators, the principles Sarah had established continued guiding responses. Her methods evolved with technology. Her influence expanded through former students now teaching their own classes, but the core message remained unchanged. Protection of the innocent required constant vigilance, and vigilance was simply another word for love. Time moved differently in Cedar Valley after Sarah Mitchell's retirement. The rhythms of academic years continued their predictable cycle, but the community carried within it a transformed heartbeat, one that pulsed with awareness born from hard-won wisdom. The science wing bearing her name became more than a collection of classrooms. It evolved into a living testament to the power of observation and the courage to act on instinct. Emily Ross Chen, now Dr. Ross Chen, returned to Cedar Valley 5 years after Sarah's retirement to establish the Mitchell Institute for Protective Education. The facility occupied a modern building adjacent to the middle school, its architecture deliberately open and transparent, with sightlines carefully planned to eliminate blind spots while maintaining an atmosphere of welcome rather than fortress. The Institute's mission extended far beyond the original incident that had sparked its creation. Emily assembled a team of educators, psychologists, former law enforcement officials, and technology experts to develop comprehensive programs that could be implemented in schools worldwide. Their work focused on empowering children and educators to recognize danger signals without living in fear. Sarah, now in her early 60s, served as the Institute's honorary advisor. She spent her mornings in the research library, reviewing case studies and consulting on curriculum development. Her afternoons often found her in the memorial garden, which had grown to encompass several acres of carefully tended landscapes, each section representing a different aspect of healing and growth. The garden's newest addition was a technology pavilion where students learned to use artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify patterns in surveillance data. Emily's doctoral research had evolved into practical applications that helped law enforcement agencies nationwide detect predatory behavior before it escalated to physical threats. The software, named Guardian Vision, incorporated principles Sarah had taught about careful observation and pattern recognition. David Ross had remarried, finding love with a child advocacy attorney who shared his passion for protecting the vulnerable. Together, they expanded the scholarship fund into a foundation that supported not only students, but also research into childhood trauma and recovery. Their work ensured that the lessons learned in Cedar Valley continued rippling outward, touching lives across the country. The annual Cedar Valley Safety Symposium drew attendees from around the globe. Educators, security professionals, and child welfare advocates gathered to share strategies and innovations. Sarah delivered the keynote address at the 10th anniversary symposium, her speech weaving together personal anecdotes with broader insights about the responsibility of communities to protect their most vulnerable members. Former students of Sarah's had spread across various professions, many choosing careers influenced by their experience. Marcus Williams became a pediatric psychiatrist specializing in trauma recovery. Sophia Patel developed educational software that taught children about personal safety through interactive games. Jason Chen joined the FBI's cybercrime division, focusing on online predators. The legal landscape had shifted significantly since the Tillman case. Emily's law had been adopted by 12 states, with federal legislation pending. The law required regular inspections of abandoned properties near schools and established standardized protocols for reviewing field trip documentation. What had begun as one teacher's careful attention to detail had transformed into systematic protection for millions of children. Rebecca Martinez, Emily's childhood friend, had become a documentary filmmaker. Her latest project chronicled the long-term impact of the Cedar Valley incident, interviewing dozens of people whose lives had been touched by Sarah's discovery. The film emphasized not the darkness of what might have happened, but the light of what did happen when a community chose vigilance over complacency. The Mitchell Institute developed a certification program for educators, training them in advanced observation techniques and threat assessment. The program included modules on digital forensics, behavioral analysis, and trauma-informed teaching. Graduates earned recognition as certified protective educators, a designation that schools increasingly sought when hiring new staff. Technology continued to evolve, and with it, the nature of threats to children. The Institute stayed ahead of these changes, developing protocols for identifying grooming behavior in online gaming platforms, social media manipulation tactics, and deepfake imagery. Emily's team worked closely with tech companies to build safety features into new platforms from the ground up. Sarah's influence extended through a series of books she wrote during retirement. Her memoir, The Weight of Watching, became required reading in education programs nationwide. She followed it with practical guides for parents and educators, each volume distilling decades of experience into accessible wisdom. The books avoided sensationalism, focusing instead on empowerment through awareness. The Hartley Mansion site had been transformed beyond recognition. Where the decrepit building once stood, a state-of-the-art community center now served as a hub for youth activities. Every room featured multiple exit routes and clear sight lines, security seamlessly integrated into welcoming design. Children attended art classes, robotics clubs, and sports programs in spaces that prioritized both creativity and safety. Cedar Valley Middle School's evolution continued under new leadership. Sarah's successor, Maria Gonzalez, had trained directly under her for 2 years before taking over the science department. Maria maintained Sarah's traditions while adding her own innovations, including a peer mentoring program where older students taught younger ones about personal safety and digital citizenship. The community's approach to healing had become a model studied by trauma specialists worldwide. Rather than allowing fear to dominate, Cedar Valley had chosen to transform vulnerability into strength. Support groups evolved into action committees. Anxiety transformed into productive vigilance. The shared experience of near tragedy had forged bonds that strengthened rather than fractured the community fabric. Lauren Harper's role as district security coordinator had expanded into a regional position. She developed training programs that helped other schools implement Cedar Valley's integrated approach to safety. Her presentations emphasized that security wasn't about building walls, but about building awareness, not about limiting freedom, but about creating environments where freedom could flourish safely. The ripple effects of Sarah's discovery continued manifesting in unexpected ways. A network of schools using Cedar Valley protocols had identified and prevented numerous potential threats. In one case, a janitor trained in observation techniques noticed suspicious behavior that led to intervention before a planned incident could occur. In another, a cafeteria worker's report about unusual adult presence near a playground prevented an attempted abduction. Emily's children attended Cedar Valley Elementary, learning in an environment shaped by their mother's experience. She watched them play freely on carefully designed playgrounds, their natural childhood exuberance protected by invisible layers of watchful care. The balance between protection and freedom had been hard-won, but new generations benefited from the wisdom earned through trial. Research conducted at the Mitchell Institute revealed patterns in predatory behavior that hadn't been previously documented. The findings influenced law enforcement training nationwide, helping officers identify warning signs earlier in the escalation process. Several high-profile cases were solved using techniques developed from studying the Tillman incident and its aftermath. Sarah maintained an active correspondence with educators around the world who sought her guidance. Her email inbox filled daily with questions about implementing observation protocols, managing community anxiety, and balancing security with educational mission. She answered each message thoughtfully, understanding that behind every query was someone trying to protect children. The Memorial Garden hosted an annual butterfly release, symbolizing transformation and renewal. Families gathered to watch thousands of monarchs take flight, their orange wings catching sunlight as they dispersed across the sky. The ceremony had become a beloved tradition, marking not just remembrance, but celebration of life continuing despite darkness overcome. Technology developed at the Institute found applications beyond education. Hospitals used adapted versions to enhance patient safety. Airports incorporated the observation protocols into security training. The principles Sarah had applied to reviewing field trip photos had evolved into sophisticated systems protecting people in various vulnerable situations. Cedar Valley's real estate market reflected the community's reputation for safety. Young families moved to the area specifically because of its demonstrated commitment to child protection. The town's population had grown by 30% since the incident, with new residents embracing the culture of vigilance that had emerged from crisis. The school district's budget allocations showed the lasting impact of transformed priorities. While maintaining strong academic programs, significant resources went toward counseling services, security infrastructure, and teacher training in protective awareness. The investment paid dividends in both safety outcomes and educational achievement, as students thrived in environments where they felt genuinely secure. Sarah's daily walks through the Memorial Garden had become a cherished routine. She often encountered former students, now adults with children of their own, who stopped to share updates about their lives. These conversations reminded her that Her legacy lived not in buildings or programs, but in the people who carried forward the lessons she'd taught. The phenomenon of Cedar Valley effect entered academic literature, describing how communities could transform trauma into positive change. Sociologists studied the town's response as a model for collective resilience. The research identified key factors: strong leadership, community cohesion, focus on empowerment rather than fear, and commitment to systemic change rather than quick fixes. Emily's latest project involved developing international protocols for school safety. She worked with UNESCO to create adaptable frameworks that could be implemented across different cultures and educational systems. The work required delicate balance, respecting local contexts while maintaining core protective principles. The Cedar Valley Police Department had evolved its community policing model based on lessons learned from the Tillman case. Officers received specialized training in school environments, understanding developmental psychology, and recognizing grooming behaviors. The partnership between law enforcement and education had become seamless, with regular communication channels preventing the oversight gaps that had nearly led to tragedy. Sarah's grandniece had started attending Cedar Valley Middle School, bringing the story full circle. Watching the young girl navigate hallways where Sarah had once taught, seeing her participate in field trips documented with protocols Sarah had developed, felt like witnessing the future her actions had helped secure. The Institute's research revealed that communities implementing Cedar Valley protocols showed significant reductions in successful predatory attempts. The data validated what Sarah had always believed: careful observation and swift action could prevent tragedies before they occurred. The key was creating systems that supported and rewarded vigilance without fostering paranoia. Memorial garden expansions included a children's library specializing in age-appropriate books about personal safety. Authors from around the world contributed works that helped young readers understand concepts of boundaries, trusted adults, and speaking up about uncomfortable situations. Sarah often read to visiting school groups, her gentle voice making difficult topics accessible. The technology center built on the site of Tillman's former surveillance post had become a hub for innovation in protective technologies. Students learned coding while developing apps that helped peers stay safe. One student-created application, which allowed discreet reporting of concerning behavior, had been adopted by schools nationwide. Cedar Valley's journey from vulnerability to vigilance had taken nearly 2 decades. What began with one teacher noticing something wrong in a photograph had evolved into comprehensive systems protecting countless children. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick, but it had been thorough and lasting. Emily stood before a packed auditorium at the 20th anniversary of the original incident, her own teenage daughter in the audience. She spoke about her 7th grade science teacher who had saved her life by simply paying attention. She talked about how that moment had shaped not just her career, but her understanding of community responsibility. Sarah watched from the front row, her hair now silver, but her eyes still sharp with the awareness that had defined her legacy. She thought about all the children who had passed through her classroom, all the lessons taught and learned, all the moments when choosing to look closer had made the difference between safety and danger. The evening concluded with the premiere of Rebecca's documentary, weaving together interviews, archival footage, and expert analysis to tell the complete story of Cedar Valley's transformation. The film ended not with the darkness of what might have been, but with images of children playing safely in the memorial garden, their laughter a testament to vigilance rewarded. As attendees filed out into the warm spring evening, Sarah remained seated for a moment, absorbing the weight of 2 decades' journey. Emily joined her, sitting quietly beside her former teacher. No words were needed. Their shared understanding transcended language. They had both played their parts in a story larger than themselves, one that would continue protecting children long after they were gone. The next morning brought another school day to Cedar Valley. Buses arrived on schedule, students streamed. Through security checkpoints that felt as natural as doorways, teachers prepared lessons that seamlessly integrated awareness with academics. In the science wing that bore her name, Sarah Mitchell's portrait watched over new generations of students learning to see the world clearly. The memorial garden bloomed with unusual vigor that spring, as if nature itself celebrated the triumph of vigilance over vulnerability. Butterflies danced among flowers planted by children who had never known a time when their safety wasn't paramount. The transformation was complete, woven so deeply into the community's fabric that newcomers couldn't imagine it any other way. Sarah's final journal entry, discovered after her peaceful passing years later, captured the essence of her philosophy. We cannot protect children by building walls around them, but by teaching them to see clearly, trust their instincts, and speak up when something feels wrong. My legacy isn't in the danger I spotted, but in the countless teachers, parents, and students who now watch more carefully over those in their care. The Mitchell Institute continues its work today, expanding globally while maintaining its roots. In Cedar Valley, Emily Ross Chen serves as its director, carrying forward the mission inspired by a teacher who understood that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention. The butterfly garden blooms every spring. New generations of students learn to observe carefully, and somewhere a teacher reviews photographs with extra care, knowing that vigilance is love in action. Up next, you've got two more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.